following shortly. Cool. I think we are live. All right. So happy Monday, folks, and welcome to episode 41 of Change School TV, our weekly dose of inspiration for your Monday mojo and mindset reset for the week ahead. Now, tonight we have MoSibyl joining us from Oklahoma City, and she is on the show as part of our Humans of Change series. And Mo, thank you so much for coming on. I know it's bright and early where you are, but super excited to have you here. And just for those of you who are just signing on and maybe haven't seen our prior posts or haven't seen any updates on our page, I recently had the honor of being interviewed on the MoSibyl show, which is a podcast I'm going to share a little bit more about in just a moment. But I'm super excited to be reciprocating and having this chance to have Mo on our show so that we can kind of connect our awesome communities and all the synergies inside what we're both doing. So Mo, thanks again for being here, and allow me to just do a brief introduction to you for those who are just jumping on, and then we can dive into some of the questions I've got lined up for us. Awesome. Sure. Great. Okay, so once again, for those of you just joining, this is episode 41 of Change School TV, and we have special guest MoSibyl on the show. MoSibyl is a Nigerian-born, US-educated, Korean-speaking, struggling intellectual. I absolutely love that title. And Mo is the founder and host of the More Sibyl Podcast, a podcast about culture and cultural nomads designed for Blacks and Asians and those who love them. She's also an assistant professor in pharmacy, teaching graduate-level degrees in social determinants of health, mentoring upcoming health researchers, and conducting outcomes research in underserved and minority populations. Now, previously, Mo was a clinical pharmacist taking care of patients with chronic infections like HIV and tuberculosis. And Mo is also a curious learner with a special love for learning about other cultures. Enamored with the Korean culture, she has taught herself to speak Korean at an intermediate level. And in her spare time, she enjoys reading, singing, writing, outdoor and extreme activities, traveling, playing the bongo drum, and watching Korean dramas. Most recently, she's cultivated a newfound love for bujo, also known as bullet journaling. How's that for a well-rounded intro, Mo?
Perfect. You did it perfectly. Thank you. Thank you. I'm like,
awesome.
About me.
No, it's so great. And there's so much interesting stuff in there that I'm so excited to unpack tonight.
Thank you.
So thanks again for spending your morning with us. And I say, let's just dive right into the question, shall we?
Yeah, I totally agree.
Perfect. Okay. So first things first, of course, I have to kind of unravel your super interesting background and let our viewers hear all about it. So I love this description that you shared with us: Nigerian-born, US-educated, Korean-speaking, struggling intellectual. So can you take a few moments to elaborate on how you've come to identify with these parts of you and what they mean to you? Why are they important?
All right. First, thank you once again for bringing me on the show. So let's take each of the components and talk about that. So Nigerian-born, that's very self-explanatory, right? I grew up in Nigeria in the 80s, juxtaposed between the repressive dictatorship era, because my country went through a military regime for the most part of our democracy until we had democracy in 1999. So growing up on the side of the 80s, where you had to go through rationing and suppression of everything, and then bam, 1999, we regained our democracy, and there's so much, surplus, and I was like, how do you manage that? So I find sometimes where I go through life where I'm very aesthetic about things, and then I go over, because there's never really that balance. So it wasn't until recently I started, because I'm learning more about myself. that might come as a shocker to some people listening. Like, I'm coming into myself and getting comfortable with the whole package that is More. So that was, growing up in Nigeria. I really loved it. I grew up in Lagos specifically, and that's like the most dense place in Nigeria. Think of it like New York, with all the madness and the chaos, yeah. But it was a city that I loved. It was very fast paced, and I went to school there, lived there with my two brothers, my mom and my dad, and and then went to school, and then decided to come to the US in 2011. We're going to talk about that, because there's a question that you wanted to ask me about that. And then I moved to the US in 2011 for grad school, got my master's and my PhD along the way, and I decided I wanted to go into academia. And while I was here, I got interested in Korean culture, not just while I was in school, but I really it didn't make sense until everything pieced together to form like this whole new thing. And so in February of 2017, last year exactly, I started learning Korean. And so when people say they taught themselves Korean or taught themselves a new language, it's not really like you're teaching yourself, but you started by yourself, because it's not like the knowledge came to you and you're like, ooh, I can speak Korean now. But it started with internet videos and, online correspondences. And then later that year, I decided to go for like a speaking class so I could, learn from a native. So I've been doing that for a year now, and it's been phenomenal. Like the conversations the conversations I've started just by someone like me speaking Korean. And when I see Korean people for the first time and I open my mouth and like, like, I'm shocked. Like, how are you able to, produce those words? Like, it's not how it's supposed to be. So I was like, that shocking people when I just meet them for the first time, because they never see it coming. So that's that. I'm struggling intellectual. It's just what it is, I'm an unwilling intellectual. Knowledge is, I get higher knowing things, but there's always a cost to pay, because there's always that restlessness. Like every day I wake up, I have to learn something new. So I'm like going out foraging for information, because that's the kind of person I am. I have this way of just retaining information and I apply them when they need to be. But that comes with the challenges, and also with my type A personality, I've had struggles with, perfectionism, where sometimes it's hard for me to like finish my work because I have to make it perfect. Well, we're kind of getting, that behind and, trying to rise above that. So that's just a little tidbit about me.
I love it. And it's definitely something I can resonate with. I always call myself a recovering perfectionist, and it's been a long and hard journey.
I like that. Because when I was in high school, I put that on my resume. Not high school, college. It was something I would post about. Like, what are your strengths? Oh, I'm a perfectionist. No. And like, no. You don't see gray areas. The world has to be black or white. And then that kind of, stunts you. So I'm saying it for what it is. It's a gift to have, but it's not something you should pride yourself in having, because it can be very dangerous as well. So
yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It's always a work in progress, right?
It is. Whip, whip, like I like to call it.
Awesome. Okay, so let's backtrack a little bit and maybe break down some of the bits and bobs that you've already mentioned and shared. So I'm curious to know what made you decide to get into the field of clinical pharmacy. So you went from academia and then you kind of evolved and moved from there. So can you walk us through like what kind of pulled you towards that area of interest or that field?
So I actually started in clinical pharmacy. I think why I got into pharmacy, and I wish I had a very smart response for you, but I don't know if it's going to break your heart. I had a pharmacist right in front of my house. We called them chemists back home. And every time I went to see her, she was always nicely dressed. And she would hand me vitamin C's, like the orange flavored ones. And I'm like, I want to have a job where I can have access to, vitamin C so I can get them all day. And I don't have a drug habit, by the way, in case anyone was wondering. So that was that, because she was always dressed. Whatever day it was, she was super nice, and she would open the door to the pharmacy. She would let me in, and every time I even go, like she would just give me, no matter how many times I went there. So I was very curious about the lady behind the counter. And when it came for me to choose a degree, because I don't know how it works, in Singapore, wherever you grew up. I know it wasn't Singapore, by the way. You had to like choose your degrees, and then you write an exams, and depending on your scores, you can either get to that degree you chose, or you got bounced to a lesser one. So I was so confused because I put medicine as my first choice and pharmacy as my second choice. which doesn't make sense because they're like totally different paths.
Right.
And I did have the opportunity to get into medicine because I went through like what they call like it's not called A-level, it's called diploma, almost like a pre-entry way. But I don't know what made me just stop. Like, okay, no, I think I want to do pharmacy. And so I got my degree in 2008. And I worked for a while in clinical pharmacy. And I think it was my decision to get into HIV and tuberculosis that really set that, platform for me to come into grad school. So yes, it was just, I think now I know because I'm in the people business. I love interacting with people. I love solving problems. And now I can see why I was lured there was a tendency for me to go into pharmacy because it's such a people-dominated field in such a way that whatever capacity you are as a pharmacist, you're still helping people. So I think that kind of speaks to my nature as a person.
I love it. No, and that's great. I think everybody kind of feels a pull or an inclination towards something for a different reason. And for some of us, we're very lucky from the beginning to just know, right? Like, this is what I want and why. I was not one of those people. So I'm not at all disappointed by your answer. It totally makes sense. And, also, I think you highlight a really common point that we talk about, which is a lot of times things don't really make as much sense until later, right? And then we look back and we go, oh yeah, okay. It's
totally.
People, right? And
that's why I'm always careful when I tell my story. Like, it looks like everything was like well sequenced. No, it was like, if you saw the chart of my life, it's not a straight line. It's like squiggly lines and, like find Elmo, that kind of line. That's how my life was.
Totally. Yeah.
So I find Waldo. Yeah, find Waldo, not Elmo. You can find Elmo if you want to.
Okay, so, I'd like to know, I know you had shared with me previously and you just mentioned now as well, and it was also in the introduction, right? So I imagine that when you've worked with HIV and tuberculosis patients, that would have been, I don't even know what the word, I can't imagine, right? But it would have had a big impact in your life and probably your worldview as well. So can you share a little bit about what that experience was like for you?
Sure. So when I was in my fourth year of pharmacy school, I had a professor look me dead straight in the eye, like, you need to go get your PhD. I'm like, no, I don't want to get stuck in school forever. I want to make money. Well, I didn't reply her that way, but that was the thought I had in my heart. And so pharmacy school ended. I worked with Chevron for a bit because Chevron, they had like a lot of medical, well, not a lot, but they had like medical centers for their employees and, their families. And that was like it was a perfect setting. They were into electronic prescribing. You could go on ward rounds with the doctors. I was really involved in patient care at a very optimal level, which was different from what was obtainable in the larger society in Nigeria. So I felt very privileged to have been a part of that. But then, I left Chevron and my work ended with Chevron, and I decided to work with the Harvard School of Public Health. Then they had centers in Nigeria for patients with HIV and opportunistic infections like tuberculosis. And so they called it PEPFAR. It was actually started by, I think, Bush. It was the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief in Africa, PEPFAR. And it was then that I realized that, as a contrast to where I was coming from, like almost like I went from the suburbs to like the boondocks, as far as experience-wise. Because here you had patients that were indigent. Like most of them they couldn't afford the medications because it was a free clinic. So all they had to do was to transfer themselves from wherever they were. And it was something that sometimes patients would drive like 4 hours, 5 hours to come pick up their medications. And just knowing that these patients really needed it, because when you work with HIV patients, one thing you quickly realize is that you have to empower patients in such a way that they take their medications 9 out of 10 times at least. Because if you miss your medications, like the time you're supposed to take them and the doses you're supposed to take them in, your viral load, which is like something you measure to see how you're doing, like how many viruses like you have in your cell millimeter square. So it could go high like within days. And so patients, every time the patients would come in, would have them go draw their blood. And then we have those results ready when we are counseling them and just seeing how they're doing. And of course, one thing you always know, if you've watched Dr. House, is patients always lie. They're like, yeah, I'm taking my medications. But your blood tells us something different. Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And it was that time where HIV became like a big thing in Nigeria. So there was a lot of stigma associated with it as well. And for these patients, it was very hard for them to reconcile that part of them. And there's always that preconceived notion almost everyone had, like if you had HIV, it's because you were promiscuous, or you did something, like you had sex when you're supposed to have sex, or things like that. So those stigmas, like patients had to like deal with them. And as a result, and for so many other factors, a lot of patients weren't doing well. Like there were many times I would sit my patients down, hold their hands, look them in the eye, would cry together, would come up with plans together, and I go home and they come back 3 months later and they're not really doing well. And so that kind of gets to you as a pharmacist, because remember, it wasn't too far away that I got my degree, and I was armed with all the knowledge. I thought there was a bit of arrogance in that as well, because I felt like, if I tell my patients to do stuff, they should listen to me. But I couldn't get at the heart of it. Like, I didn't understand patient behavior. I didn't understand, because to me it made sense, like, you have to take your medications, just do it. And this was before we had like combination pills. Now you can have like 2 pills, and that could serve for like your daily dose. Then patients were taking cocktails of medications, about 10, like almost like an M&M, bag you had in there. And they came with a lot of side effects. They came with a lot of, things that impacted their activities of daily living. We had a policeman, and he had to be on a drug that caused him to sleep during the day. Imagine a cop sleeping at work. Like, how do you explain that? And some of them will have like Steven Johnson reactions, like, their faces will come up with a lot of rashes, which was even worse than the HIV itself, because it was very visible for others to see. So that frustration drove me back to grad school, because I decided I needed to learn more about, socioeconomic impact of healthcare, and also patient behavior. So I applied to schools, and I got into University of Texas at Austin. Who came on? And then my first project in for that semester was HIV adherence, and for me it was a way of just giving back, and because that was my mission, that was what I wanted to do, that was what set me on this course. So yeah, I'm grateful for that time. It was a decrease in pay cuts, but it really made a lot of sense, and I'm thankful, because if I wasn't exposed to that clinic, I probably wouldn't be here by now.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's so interesting, and I have to kind of put hats off to you. I think for one, recognizing, one, for choosing that line of work, which is so noble, and then two, really being able to recognize in that space, like, okay, I'm seeing one side of it, but there's actually more that I want to uncover and understand on a deeper level. And then being proactive to go and actually study that, right, is not something I think everybody would be so proactive to do. So that's amazing. Yeah. And so what kind of happened from there once you attained that additional degree and had that sort of socioeconomic understanding? How did that impact your next step in your career?
Very good point. So while I was in grad school, so usually in my program, there are 2 things you can end up doing, like largely. You can either go into academia, or you can work for big pharma or consulting companies. And I was confused as usual, because, decisions I have to make in my life, there has to be drama behind it. Because if there's no drama, then it's not a business. That is my life. Like, I need to have my own keeping up with the moles and, whatever. I was confused. I didn't know what to do. And I went on an internship with a biotech company to kind of have like that process of elimination, to know what I did not want to do. I loved it totally. So it further really confused me, and I was like, oh my goodness, what am I supposed to do with my life? And as a way to kind of play the game very well, because usually your dissertation would determine where you, like the kind of problems you solve can determine your potential employer. Like, what are you gearing towards? Are you gearing towards the industry, or are you gearing towards academia? So what I did was really a smart move. I made my dissertation in such a way that it could play both teams, because that was my way of just saying, guys, I'm confused, but I wouldn't let them know that I was confused. Right. So every time I went for the pharma interview, I was like, I want to be with you guys. Like, almost like I was 2-timing. Every time I went for the academia, I was like, I want to be with you guys. And sometimes I'll have like somebody ask me, like, I can see your work, like, being applicable to the other, team. Why didn't you apply to them? And of course, I'll come up with a really smart answer, which was really true, because, that I had to do on my own. And I think it came down to my love for teaching. At the end of the day, that was a deciding factor, because both offers looked good. I got 2 offers, best believe, one for consulting and one for academia. And I probably would have gotten more if I kept on with the interview, because these interviews are long. They can span like months. You have like steps and series. And at that point, after getting 2 offers, I didn't want to waste anybody's time. I just wanted to focus on the 2 offers. And I thought to myself, okay, what do you want to be in the next 5 years? And I don't like that 5 years, plan people always talk about, because what does 5 years mean? Like, really? Yeah. But I just thought to myself, like, if I had to look back and be like, what I've done the most, what have really given me that joy, because I'm someone that if I'm not really passionate about something, as far as something tangible, I don't engage in it. Like, that's it. But when I love something, I go all out. And it came down to the love of teaching. And so, because I know in consulting, you could teach, but that wasn't part of your job description. You had to like go seek out those adjunct professor positions and then apply yourself. So it wasn't really formalized. It wasn't a formalized mechanism that I wanted. So I decided to go into academia, and it's been a year and some months. And initially it was a bit rough. Like, things just start newly. I wouldn't lie. It's been challenging, but it's just life, because not everything you do is going to be interesting and fun at the beginning. But by the time you start applying yourself to it, it becomes easier. So I enjoy what I do now. I enjoy teaching. I've always, even in grad school as a TA, as a teaching assistant, I just love seeing that light bulb go on in my students' head. I have won a couple of awards for teaching. I wasn't really very good initially because I was very brash about teaching, like you had to get it or not. But I've learned patience. I've learned, how to adopt different teaching styles. I've learned to meet my students at where they are and see how I can push them a little bit. I've learned mostly to help them think about the world we live in, so that my teachings doesn't just make them think in silo, because you're not just one pharmacist. You're going to have so much contact with people from around the world. So I let them know about cultural sensitivity. I let them know like things that I didn't know while I was practicing as a pharmacist. I want them to do better. So that really inspires me. And so that's part of my job description.
Oh, I absolutely love it. And there's some key points I just want to recap for those who are watching right now, because I think they're really valuable. So one is, I love this strategic approach to keeping your options open, right? I think that's so important. And I think something that we hear a lot from our students sometimes is like, okay, how do I choose, right? What if there's multiple interests? What if there's multiple directions? And a lot of times we say, well, you don't have to choose until you have to choose, right?
Yeah.
So how can you kind of push everything in parallel? And I think you've given a great example just in interviews, right? You can say, really express genuine, right, interest and passion in multiple things, right? And it's not lying. It's just keeping your options open, right?
Yeah. It feels like lying because the world wants you to say one thing, but I've never been a one thing person. I have multiple expressions, so I have to play the part and make them understand that while I'm with you. Like, I'm going to tell you everything that I know can be applicable to you. It's not lying. It's just, it's just the world we live in.
Exactly. No, that's exactly right. And secondly, I love, another thing you said was kind of looking back, right? And knowing like, what are the things that really you enjoy? And then the flip side of that is also knowing that like when you really enjoy something, even if there's parts you don't enjoy, that's when you really light up, right? That's what engages you the most. So I think it's important to have that self-awareness.
Yeah, and I've learned that you shouldn't put all of your joy in the work. Like, if you have as long as you don't have a toxic environment, which, I wouldn't say you should try, putting up with. Some parts of my work are not very interesting. I don't like red tapes. I work for an institution, a very big institution in Oklahoma, and there's so many protocols I have to do to get stuff done, and I don't like that part of it. But it's just what I have to do, and so I have to make up for it in other things that I like. So that way my job doesn't become like a drone. Another thing I forgot to mention is keep moving. Keep moving. Don't be static. Even if you don't know where you're going, just keep walking. Like Johnny walking with you. And I'm not trying to endorse alcohol or engaging in this kind of excessive behavior. But there's thing Johnny Walker always says: keep walking. Like, just keep walking. Even if you don't know where you're going, whatever you find your hands find to do them well, because you never know.
Absolutely. No, that's great tips. And actually, you're a bit ahead of me, because I'm going to hop around some of the questions now, because I think, just going from what you've shared already, what do you think? I mean, you've shared some really great nuggets of wisdom already, but what do you feel when you look back is the biggest life lesson, or even biggest career lesson that you've learned from your journey that, anyone that's watching right now who might be feeling stuck or confused can kind of take into the week ahead?
Wow. I think the main things I could say, but first is know yourself, you know, and I know that's very, do you say know yourself? You have to know yourself. You have to know what you like, what keeps you up at night. You have to know what you don't like, and it's okay to not like some certain things. And even if you can't know yourself, maybe for me, you know, I had an interrupted childhood in such a way that I didn't really come to know myself until, you know, much later, because I had to because knowing yourself means having to sit down by yourself and focus on yourself, which can be very hard for some people to do because they haven't probably realigned the hurting child to the adult they've become. But if you can't do that, ask your friends, like, hey, what do you think I'm good at? You know, what do you think I'm good at? Like one time I had to even put that on Facebook and people were like, oh, you're good at talking to, before I launched my podcast, by the way, you're good at talking to people. I feel safe talking to you. You're so comfortable to talk to. I trust you. And I'm like, whoa, like I didn't know. I mean, I kind of knew these things about myself, but I didn't really know them in the same vein. Another thing you can do is, you know, have good mentors. And I know when people talk about their success story, I didn't come here like by myself. I have to make that very clear. This person in front of you, when they say in Africa, it takes a village to raise a child, there are many villagers and, you know, people from the next village that raised this child, you know, and there's so many people I could, you know, start calling their names, but there's not going to be time for that. I've had people that have poured a lot into me, and it would be very, very disastrous if I didn't give back to people around me. So have good mentors, have people that really have your interest at heart. Like, so cultivate that mentorship. And I have mentors from all over, people that I don't even get to see anymore because we've left the same physical space. So have good mentors and understand that when you do go through challenges in your work, ask around, because trust that somebody else is going through that. Because when I was trying to, you know, integrate from grad student to a professor, I had a lot of challenges. And I'm always someone that, you know, I like to ask questions. Even sometimes it might be very difficult to ask. But I found the right people to ask these questions to, because they were like, oh yeah, it's okay. We feel that way. It's totally normal. So I have 5 people that I always say you should have. Well, not me, but I learned it from somewhere. A mentor, a sponsor, a connector, an expert, and a friend.
You know? I love it. All right, let's repeat that again just so I get it. A mentor, a sponsor, a connector,
and a friend. A mentor is somebody that you frequently consult for advice, right? We all know what a mentor is. Yeah. And now a sponsor, that person is your brand magnifier, that they talk you up and they put you in the room. They're usually people of power. So people are like, how do you differentiate between a mentor and a sponsor? The sponsor has the power. Right. They can open the door, and it can even be financially supporting you, or just putting you in a room of people that have all the things you need. A connector could also be someone that links you to people you should know. They might not have all the power, but they were like, you know what, I think you should email this person. They might have that thing you need. Now, an expert is someone that has a wealth of knowledge in your field and is share with you. Now, a close friend is somebody that gives you that safe space to cry. And I think for the most part, we have overused our mentors. We've made them into sponsors. So mentors are not good sponsors. So they get very overwhelmed. And I think as women, we've been over-mentored and under-sponsored for the most part. So I had to learn how to find my sponsors. I only have one sponsor because they're very, very hard to find because they have to really like you. Unlike a mentor that might do it out of obligation. Now, a sponsor has to see something in you. It could be they see somebody that they were 10 years before then and they want to cultivate that in you. But it takes a lot of time to find those people. For me, it took getting up in a room packed to people and speaking for myself and advocating or contributing to the narrative, which are not easy things to do, because even though I seem bold, I can be very withdrawn when it comes to like certain situations. But I've learned how to advocate for myself, put myself out there. So yes, finding those people in your life can make a lot of things easier. And and always remember why you're doing things. Always remember the whys. The days that are frustrating for me, in my office, I have different things that reminds me. Even on my phone, I set reminders once in a while to just pop up. Like, I always go back to the pharmacist that I was. And so what I do right now is very patient-driven. I develop evidence for real-world evidence to help patients, make sure that the drugs they're taking is safe and the drugs they're taking are effective. So I do a lot of outcomes research. I always remember the whys. So never forget the whys. Even when life really gets tough, never forget the whys. So those are 3 points that come to mind. I have a lot, but for the interest of time,
Yeah, no, these are amazing. So I'm going to recap them. I think you gave more than 3, so we are very lucky tonight. Yeah, no, it's fabulous. So just to recap, know yourself, have good mentors. You know, when you're going through something, ask people, right? Ask other people when you face challenges, talk to them, and you'll be surprised to realize that they may either resonate, relate, or be able to help you. Be sure to surround yourself by these 5 people: a mentor, a sponsor, a connector, a friend, and an expert. And always remember your why. I love those. And they resonate so much with what we tell our students. So again, I'm always happy when we're not the ones saying it, somebody else is. That's awesome. Thank you for that. So before we jump ahead to a couple of last few questions I have, you know, do you want to help us maybe connect the dots to tonight's episode title, which you suggested, and I love it, right? So that journey from frustration to finding your path. And I think it's been embedded in everything you shared, but maybe you can help to recap again, you know, what that journey was like for you, and how can others kind of recognize if they're in a frustrating moment, and how can they flip it to start finding their path?
Oh, okay. Well, for me, finding my path meant finding me. And I know that sounds very cliche, but let me explain. I'll say that finding me was probably the hardest thing I had to do because, like I said, it required quieting those voices inside and focusing on a child that I had muted for so long. And so I had to reconcile that child to the adult that I'd become. And when there was a bit of realignment was when I began to see, okay, let's focus on me now, which was very difficult to do before then.
Yeah.
When I began to overcome this, I began to thrive and focus on my energy, like things that really mattered to me. I didn't have to, like, you know, give excuses for things I couldn't do before, because I felt free. I felt like really liberated. Like that was a real feeling for me. And something there's a quote that I like. It's by Aaron McEwan. He said, "This is what I know: human nature, the human heart, the spirit, the soul, the consciousness, whatever you call it. In the end, we've all got to work with it. It has to develop and expand, or the sum of our misery will never diminish. My own small discovery has been that this change is possible. It is within our power. Without a revolution of the inner life, however slow, all our big designs are worthless. The work we have to do is with ourselves if we're ever going to be at peace with each other. So conquer yourself, you know, conquer your fears, conquer that thing that you feel like I can never talk to somebody about. Conquer, you know, those secrets you're really nursing, because they hold you back. Sometimes we are our own worst enemies. Like we hold us. The word hater. I realized that I was my own hater, not because I was, you know, purposely doing it, but because I felt like I couldn't express some things that hurt me as a child. When I found the space to do that, it became like, you know what, I'm free now. I don't have to look back anymore. So yeah, that frustration seemed a lot that way because of things that was, you know, that was holding me back. And even when those things stopped holding me back, there were some other barriers, you know, I had to face. So like I talked about knowing yourself, one of the biggest things that draws me back is I am an analyzer. Like if I want to do a project, I bring out all my color notes and I try to, everything has to be a project. Everything has to be a drama behind it. And sometimes it's just like, nobody needs a spreadsheet on how to like plant a tree. But I'm like, you do, you know, and you're down because you're all into the details, and then execution is like, cannot fly anymore. So now that I know that, I always have to remind myself, okay, it's not that serious. It's not that, it doesn't require like a whole sermon or a whole, you know, roll of A4 paper to execute this project. And talking to people around me, and I understand that, okay, Mo, I don't think we should do it this way. So I have to communicate my weaknesses to people around me as well, people that I trust. Because when we talk about weakness, I don't think we should even call it weaknesses. I think we should call them opportunities for growth, because weaknesses make them sound weak. But we're humans, right? We can't all be, you know, high functioning all the time. If you're that, you should probably be in a hospital somewhere. I mean, those that are high functioning all the time, they need to be on some form of medication. So communicating your challenges to people around you, they can see that for what it is and be like, oh, you know what? I don't think she meant it that way. And they can help you abound or abase whatever it needs to be. So yeah, knowing yourself and knowing your weaknesses. And my frustration could also be imposter syndrome. You know, I don't know if it's, I mean, being female in a very male-dominated world, being, you know, I don't want to use this word, but being female and being not from here, you know, this is some of the things I had to, you know, overcome. And it wasn't as if the external environment was harsh. I had to just overcome that because sometimes it was the way I saw the world. Like, when people see me differently. So I had to also overcome that bias I had of myself, because I feel like sometimes we tend to attract what our mind, envelope. Like, if you think the world is one way, you're going to keep attracting those kind of people. So I had to work on my biases and understand that when people do things to me, it's not because they're looking at me because I'm female or male. Now, I don't think I've ever been passed off on an opportunity because a male was qualified and I didn't get it. That hasn't been my story. But I feel that sometimes I don't even put myself up for this opportunity because I think I'm not ready enough. Meanwhile, a man can do something that isn't even up to what you've done, and they know how to pump themselves up. So that's one of the things I'm trying to learn. That's why most of my mentors now, I have them as males, and they're not people like me. So I want to learn that confidence because I don't have that sometimes when it comes to my job. I want to learn how to advocate for myself. So when it's time for me to call for promotion, I know I'm ready. I'm not going to be held back by imposter syndrome. And I know that's something that also, affects a lot of people, especially women and women of color as a whole. And I don't like using that word. But especially if you're not from here, you just feel like you want to hold yourself back in one way or the other. And the thing with imposter syndrome is we all go through it. But the thing about it is like the boogeyman. Just say it. It's not real. Like, you've done so much. You've done so much to be here. So say those things you've done. Talk to people about it and be like, hey, I'm having a hard time. This week has been really hellish for me. Can I talk to you? I have a coworker. I just said, I need a hug right now. She gives me a hug. And she says that too sometimes. And having that person around that can, talk me up when I'm down, that really helps. So these are 3 things I like to, highlight as things that actually helped me to overcome my frustration and finding my path. But it was never really easy. And it's still an ongoing struggle. I haven't reached that 100% point of self-determination, but I'm getting there.
Yeah, I love it. No, I love the honesty, and it's the power of vulnerability, right? I think everything you've said, that common thread, whether it's embracing your weakness and being able to say, right, to your team or to the people that you're working with, and even flipping it in your mind rather than seeing it as a weakness, as an opportunity for growth. I love it. Right.
Yeah.
And definitely, I think probably for a lot of people, men and women alike, for different reasons, but maybe more so for women, definitely imposter syndrome is something real. And that's something we all battle with, right, at different points in our life. And so but then the last thing you said, I think, is the most powerful, and it's so true, right? We attract what we believe and what we think. And I really agree with you. If we feel a certain way about ourselves, if we allow our inner critic to be that loud, right, then we invite more criticism to ourselves. And the flip side is also true. So I think everything you said is so much truth in there, Mo. I love it.
Thank you. And I want to add, for those that are trying to find themselves, Gallup polls, they have strength finders.
Yes.
That can really help you. Yeah, I did that, and my number 1 was Impute. I'm like, yes, it makes sense. I'm an information hoarder. It makes sense that I do. I'm always strategic about things. I'm very inquisitive about the world around me. So use strength finders if you don't have good friends to find out who you are and what your strengths are.
Totally. We love personal assessments. We're always sharing different ones. Gallup is a great one, and I'll share the link for anyone who's watching right after this, so you can head on over and do one if you haven't done it before. Awesome. So you shared some great lessons with us. You shared loads of practical tips. So now I just want to jump a little bit on the side. And I'd like to know, actually, now I'm indecisive about which question. Okay, let me back up. Let me jump into the MoSibyl podcast. Why don't you share with us a little bit about that? Why did you start it? What's the mission behind it? And where can people find it?
Oh, okay. Thank you for that. Well, what most people don't know is that I actually attempted starting a podcast in 2014 with a group of friends, but it didn't work out. We designed the logo. We honed the concept. We actually bought expensive gadgets. Actually, looking back now, I felt like we're trying to make up for our inadequacies. But I think for me, radio, I've always been a child of radio. Like, I loved listening to the radio as a kid. That was my when I would put on the radio and just listen to it, I was in my zone. And I had it was my dad's transistor radio. It was a black radio. It had fallen down many times because I had a bunk bed that I shared with my brothers. I would sleep up, they would sleep down. And every time I slept to the radio would fall down and then, it would break apart. But I'll put them together and, I knew how the wires worked. I even, at the point, I bought like my little gadget of like screwdrivers and I could solder the wires together. And it always kept working, it was that radio. And so much so that at one point I actually nursed the idea of going into engineering. So radio was, I love listening to late night shows where people would call in about problems and request songs. Dan Foster, who dominated the Nigerian radio waves then, was my favorite, radio host personality. And so radio gave way to podcasts because we became more digital, right?
Sure.
And with podcasts, you would choose your content. So I've been listening to podcasts for more than 7 years, and I listen to a lot of storytelling podcasts. And looking back now, the most things I enjoyed, even on TV, was storytelling and cultural expressions. And so it didn't make sense where I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with podcasts, but I knew how to do something. Because I had a friend call me last year in December. She was like, "No, like, why are you hiding yourself? Like, you need to be out there more. What are you doing with your life?" And she's probably told me many times, but I just brushed it aside. But this time around, it kind of stuck. Like, really, why are you hiding yourself? So I started to take a look at myself, like, okay, what exactly is going on? So when I talked about trying to reconcile that child with the adults, I had to make a lot of, it was a journey of self-reflection, revisiting some painful past and just confronting my insecurities. And when I did that and I talked to several people, they're like, you should totally do it. And my husband actually was like, hey, why not just resurrect your podcast idea? I was like, really? So I want to give him credit for that because he's always like, you don't credit yourself. Well, babe, I'm crediting you. I remember driving to Edmond, which is a city here. I was like, babe, why not just start your podcast? I was like, oh, that makes it, because I didn't want to be on YouTube. I didn't want to start doing like funny videos. That wasn't my space. I didn't have that talent for that. But I know I have a gift for talking to people. Because when I tell people that I know somebody from different countries, like, how do you know these people? I'm like, I don't see people as someone from this country or people that from this country I have to talk to. I see people for people. You have no idea just how easy it is for me to strike up a conversation with people in the elevators. That's my favorite spot because everyone is like staring at buttons and looking at them. I'm like, hey, how you doing? How's your week going? And I don't like talking about the weather. Like if I talk about the weather, which maybe I've tried all my points and I'm not getting through to you. So I'm just like, oh, it's hot out there, right? Then that's like a key, like, let's round this up. But I talk to people. I've started conversation with people that I sat with in the airplane that I did not know. And we talked about secret, like things that you would never share with anybody. I think I just have that natural disposition to talking to people. And I've had friends tell me, I trust you a lot. I feel like when I talk to you, I feel better. I feel safe. So I'm someone that I know so many things about my friends, but not that in such a way that, I have so much power. Because that humbles me that someone can see me despite all of my insecurities and open themselves up to me. I don't take that for granted. So I try to be very careful not to betray the trust of those around me. So when I launched the podcast, it was from a place of struggle. It was a place for me to connect with people. And because I felt like I was hearing a lot of conversations in isolations, but there wasn't like a platform to address these cultural issues, like acculturation, and, being African. And then there's also that tiny Asian bit of me being invested in a culture, a Korean culture. And I thought to myself, I don't want to just make it African and Asian. That was very, even though sometimes you have to define your audience, but I didn't want it to be very, boxed in. So someone said, why do you say African and Asians? I'm like, but why do you say blacks and Asian? But I'm like, there's a third component, those who love them, which is like almost everybody. I mean, who doesn't like Asians, So, and I must give credit to my mentor. He helped me craft that word. I just told him what I wanted. I was like, why not just say, for blacks and Asians and those who love? And I can't mention their name, but they know who they are. So yeah, it's a platform born out of struggle, and it's good for people. And I want people to be able to connect. I have talked about a lot of things on the show. Some things I don't agree with when my guests talk, but you'd never know, because when I say I wanted to build a community for people, sometimes it's okay that I'm not part of that community, Mm-hmm. So I don't want it to be all about me. I'm like a spokesperson, whether I agree with the content or not. And that's one thing you won't find me doing on the show, like arguing or shouting down on my guests. No. Like sometimes I don't agree with what they say, but I want them to be able to say it out anyways. I don't want to control their level of expression, because a community that excludes me doesn't mean I have to be a part of that community. So that's my mission. So it's a podcast that is aired every Thursdays, and I have some bonus episodes like I did yours yesterday on Sundays for hot topics.
Thank you. Yeah.
Check out www.MoSibyl, M as in Mike, O as in Oscar, S as in Sierra, I as in India, B as in Bravo, Y as in Yellow, and L as in Lima.com. You can also follow me on Facebook at Mo'Sibyl, or on Instagram as Mo'Sibyl. So yeah, if you want to be on the show, you don't have to be black, you don't have to be Asian. Just come on the show. I like to hear stories. I like to meet people. I met you online. I met you through Medium, emailed you, and now we're talking. So yeah, I want to connect the world because there's so many things that bind us together then separates us. And we live in an era of identity politics where we've kind of started boxing people into category. And that's my fear, that we're going to just go the way of the dodo because of some of the opinions some people hold. I feel like there's so much more we have in common. So take, for example, I'd gone to a Syrian friend's house and she was teaching me how to sew. And she was like, hey, can you hand me that thing behind you? It turned out to be a jar, like a tin of Danish cookies. I don't know if you, and then in there was her sewing equipment, and it stopped me dead in my track. I'm like, wait, did your mom used to do this as a kid too? Because every Nigerian mom, like, they would repurpose the thing and they would put like thimbles and needles and thread. And she was from Syria, and I'm like, what in the world? Like, was it like a conference for all the moms, you know, to come together and trick their kids? And I put that on Facebook, and then my Ukrainian friend said, my mom did that too. And I'm like, what the heck? Like, I would never have thought. I thought it was just something peculiar to Nigerian moms. So that's an example of so many things that binds us together, because at the end of the day, there's one human race. We all want to feel like we belong somewhere. We all want to connect. And that's the purpose of the podcast, to share stories, to build a community for people, and make us confront our humanity, because there's so much going on for us that we tend to forget sometimes and focus on all the negative stuff. So yeah, that's the podcast. And I'm the host.
Amazing. I love it. And, you know, thank you again for reaching out on Medium that day. I mean, it was such a simple note, and it's so true. The minute I read it, I was like, yes, I am in. And the minute I felt so comfortable. I mean, it's so true. You were so easy to talk to. I felt like I knew you for years and years. It's such a wonderful channel, and I will share the link. Thank you for shouting that out. I'll share the link in the posts. And you guys heard Mo, so she is shouted out, invited, open invitation to anyone who wants to share stories, who wants to, you know, find the commonality in our humanity and just and cultivate, you know, a greater sense of global community. So, you know,
any topic, even if I'm not comfortable with it, even if it's like cringe-inducing, whatever is important to you and you want to find community for, please, you know, you're welcome on the show.
I love it. Thank you, Mo. That's so generous. Thanks for putting that out there. So I'll share the links and do that. Okay, awesome. So one last thing, just it's been burning in my mind that I have to ask you.
What is it?
I want to know, I'm still so fascinated about why Korean culture? What was it that made you, like, you know, why not any other culture? Because you've been exposed to so much, right? Was there anything, like, I'm just curious.
Sure. We need a whole day for this, but I'm gonna try to, like, you know, do this quickly.
Okay.
Like I said, there were so many interactions I had with the Korean culture, but it didn't make sense. So the first one I remember was in grad school. I'd taken a class with a colleague of mine. You know how you tell your friend, hey, can we swap notes? Because I'd like to fill in the blanks. And so she gave me her note. She's Korean, by the way. And I saw the Hangul, which was the Korean characters. It was like circles and rods, and, you know, I was like, what is that? She's like, oh, that's my language. I'm like, you guys can read that? She's like, oh yeah, totally. I'm like, word people, and that was just it. And then fast forward to, I have those moments where I just, almost like I'm putting my foot in my mouth. That's just my life. That's another thing about me. And fast forward like 4 years later, I told you that I got on an internship with a biotech company. We ended up getting that same position. So we stayed together in Boston. She was my roommate in Boston. And every day she would like have rice and the little banchan, like the side dishes. And she would offer them, she would give me food to eat. And I was like, you guys eat rice every day? Like, I want me a culture where you can eat rice and not have to like say Hail Mary afterwards. And so I started learning more about her culture, and then I found out there was so many things that we had in common. And of course, the trap was, hey, do you want to watch Korean drama with me? I should have just said no. But then I did, and it was like, whoa, this is so Korean and nice. I love this. But then I didn't want to watch for too long, because when I watch TV sometimes, I want it for background noise. And with Korean entertainment, because I want to know everything on TV, like if I'm hearing stuff, you have to like focus. I couldn't read the translation, so I had to like focus on my attention. So I didn't watch a lot. And then last year I had a gap time because I was on a student visa and I converted to a work visa. And there was a bridge in between where I had to wait for my paperwork to come in. So I had gone to, New Mexico, and I was going to bed that night, and I got an email from Coursera. I don't know if anyone knows Coursera. It's a place where you can learn a lot.
Yeah.
I had taken courses on there before, negotiation, communication. You can learn how to code and things like that. And I was like, recommended courses for you. First step Korean 101. I'm like, cheesy people. Like, how do you learn Korean on the internet? Everybody knows you want to learn language. You have to visit the country. Because I speak a little bit of French, yeah. Okay. I've been studying French like all my life, like I always say. But I wasn't very interested in I think for me, the French culture, I wasn't very interested in the French culture. Like, I don't really care about French people. I mean, I love them, but I don't really care about French people. I don't care about their food. Nothing tickles me about French, except the language, which, was because French was a language we had to take for a while in school. The way you have Spanish here, because we're surrounded with so many French-speaking countries. And so I was like, okay, clicked on the email, and I was like, let me just see what it's about. 1 hour later, I could, read it. I could sound it phonetically, even though I didn't know what it was. And for me, the way it was taught by that class, it was why it was that way, Other times you try to learn a language, you don't know why that language was. So it started with the history, how the king, decided to create a language for the people so they could be more literate, because then it was only Chinese aristocrats. It was only aristocrats that could read Chinese, because they had a lot of Confucian history. And the circle is like the sun, and there's the flat earth and the standing man, and then the yin and the yang, and it just made sense. I was like, wow, like I went to bed feeling like I won $1 million, because now I could read Korean. And so little by little, I delved further into the class, took it back to back, and then went to the next class. And for me, the more I learned about the language, the more I started learning about the culture, which was missing for French for me. And that's why my French kind of, ebbed away over time, because I wasn't like applying it. So the more I learned about Korea, I started learning about their history, how they developed. I mean, the economic development of Korea is one thing that I can give a whole lecture about it. Like the way they went from like being a place nobody wanted to being one of the top, 12 countries in the world, like as far as economic development. That's something that as a Nigerian, and I don't know if you know a lot about Nigeria, we have so many issues. That's something that gives me hope. I actually wrote a piece about it recently for Bella Nigeria, which is like a very popular editorial in Nigeria, about how Nigeria can learn from South Korea as far as we needing more nationalistic leaders. And if you think about what even international economics have said about Korea at one point, like, it's a single most impressive example of what free market, democratic government, and elbow grease can do to transform a small agrarian backwater place into a global powerhouse. So that, Phoenix rise from ashes to being just a stable economy is one thing that I hope that someday Nigeria can, learn about. And of course, there's so many shared cultural values. And we talked about that in, my episode with you. Korea, there's national pride. Korea might come up as being nationalistic, but they have a lot of history. They were muted for so long when they were under imperial Japanese rule, so they didn't have their identity. And Nigerians were very nationalistic. Anywhere you go where there's a Nigerian, we're always loud, we're proud. That's the narrative we share. We also celebrate through food. Like, we like to party, we like to eat good food. And Korea is that way. There's also that familial piety, which we talked about. Your family is everything. You have to like defer to your parents. There's also that respect for your elders. So there's so many shared, cultural value. And of course, the food. I eat them. I enjoy eating them. I make them too. I've also had meaningful conversations around this table when I have Korean students. Because one thing I do now is every Tuesday, I volunteer at a school here in Edmond, and they have a lot of exchange students from Korea. And the first time they see me at the airport, and I open my mouth and I'm like, hey, listen, and they're like, So we kind of form conversations. They're very comfortable talking to me, because when they come here, it's very difficult for them because of the language barrier. A lot of Koreans coming here, they can write and listen well, but speaking is really, difficult, because they only learn the grammar, they don't know how to speak it. And I have that problem too, because speaking was very difficult for me. So we kind of bonded. I'll teach them English, they teach me Korean. And and one thing I do now is every time I travel around the US, because I get travel a lot, I stop by restaurants, Korean restaurants, and I have Korean food. If I have friends that live in that city, I invite them over. So I'm making disciples of everybody, everywhere I go, to enjoy Korean food. And even the words, like the words they make sense. It's very scientific. It's been proven that it's, I think, 13th most scientific language in the world. So let me give you an example. So the word for leader in Korea is jido-ja. Jido means map, and ja means person. So a leader is someone that has a map. I mean, that makes sense, Yeah. And there's so many words that I see that you put together, and I'm like screaming like out of excitement. And thankfully, when I have those moments, I'm always by myself because it would just look weird to someone else looking at me. What's up with her? Because I get excited with words. I love words. So yeah, and then there's also the entertainment scene, Korea drama. I find them very corny, but they're entertaining too because they have those core values that I talked about. I also love the songs. I don't do, BTS or these boy bands. I'm more of the old school. When I tell my Korean friends the songs I listen to, like, those people, I'm like, yes. There's an Ajuma, like that old lady stuck inside of me, So yeah, Korea all the way. I haven't visited yet. I'm gonna go next year by God's grace.
Yeah.
My husband is worried I'm not gonna come back if I go to Korea. So yeah, that's Korea. Yeah, I can talk about Korea. I get excited talking about Korea.
I know, I can tell. I absolutely love it, and I love. I'm just fascinated by your fascination, and you really are a learner, teacher, knowledge seeker, true and true. Because that is.
Thank you.
Absolutely. No, it's brilliant. Oh, thanks so much, Mo. And look at you all lit up now that we're talking about it. I love it.
Don't get me started in Korea. I just go off.
Amazing. Mo, well, thank you so much. This has been such a wonderful session, and thank you for sharing all this wisdom. And so after this, I'm going to share as many of the links and notes that I've jotted down. But, I'll tag you in there, and if there's anything I've missed or if there's anything you want to add on, please do. And I'll share your contact info as well. So just before we wrap up, just a little shout out to those of you who've been watching. As you know, we like to always wrap up with a bit of a call to action so that you can not only take some inspiring ideas and stories into your week ahead, but also do something that can help you to move forward. So call to action for tonight is to keep a lookout on our Facebook page for our upcoming free masterclasses. We've got 2 of our most popular ones coming up next week. So just watch our Facebook page, or if you're subscribed to our newsletter, you will get announcements on there. But those classes really aim to help you find your next career direction and or reinvent yourself for a big, bold career move so that you can actually put into action all the things that Mo's shared today, which if you guys have been watching us, you would know it's a lot of the stuff we always say. But here you go. You heard it from someone else who's done it, who is living and breathing all of the goodness that comes when we challenge ourselves to go beyond our comfort zone and let ourselves be driven and led by our interests and curiosity and desire to learn and be more. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much. Have a great week ahead. Mo, thank you so much. Have a great week ahead, and I'll connect with you right after this.
Thank you.
Awesome. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.